She's the wife and mom who is accused of shocking crimes. Not only did she have sexual contact with a juvenile inmate in custody on a murder charge, as she was his teacher, she was also accused of trying to get that juvenile who she was teaching in that facility to kill her husband.
I've been arrested.
I'll let you know that you've been arrested.
Sure.
The case involving Elena Bardin took a wild turn when it came time for a verdict. And now she's learned her sentence. We'll talk about whether or not she is headed to prison. We're on The Case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey, before we start this episode of On the Case, let's talk about Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They have more than 1,000 attorneys, and they've recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. Well, this is just frankly a wild story about a mom who's accused of unthinkable crimes on multiple fronts. A teacher who certainly crossed the line with an underage student and then was accused of going to alleged lethal lengths to end a marriage. Now, I want you to meet the woman at the center of this story. We have body camera video of her arrest that we'll get to in just a moment. We just learned her sentence for the crime that she was found guilty of in court after a trial.
I've been arrested.
I'll let you know that you've been arrested.
Sure.
Prosecutors in tiny Adair County, Kentucky, argued that 27-year-old Elena Bardin not only had sex with a juvenile she was teaching inside a juvenile justice facility, that she also tried to get that student to allegedly kill her husband. Now, Elena was a teacher in the public school system, and she was assigned to help young people spending time at that local facility. She was working to help people who were in trouble with the law at a young age. It's important to work. It's admirable work. And who Elena appeared to be at home was also very admirable. She was what appeared to be a loving wife who posted videos on TikTok of date night with her husband. And she's also a mom. And she made sure that people knew just how much she loved her daughter. And you can see in this post that she says, "My girl." She posted that on March 27th of this year. But that month, staff at the Juvenile Detention Center found letters that were left for an inmate serving time in connection to a murder out of Louisville, Kentucky. Now, we have dozens of pages of explicit messages, and I'll tell you, several of them, they are far too graphic to be able to show you here. But this is one that is between Bardin and the student, where she talks about oral sex with the boy and having sex in his cell. And she finishes that note by saying, quote, "I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did." And she also says, "I love you, and I'd like to run into your arms, but that might be odd, LOL." Now, on top of the letters, prosecutors presented explicit pictures that Bardin sent this boy. She got them developed at a local Walmart. They also have security camera footage showing this teacher, Elena Bardin, going into the boy's cell at the juvenile detention facility, even though that is not allowed per facility rules. So you can see there's a lot of lines that are being crossed here. And not only did Bardin sexually abuse this teenager, she also made statements in the letters that had prosecutors believing that she wanted to put a hit out on her husband, a man who, at least on social media, she seemed to love, the father of her daughter. Yet in this letter, she says, quote, "Okay, call me effed up, but if you want, I thought you were talking about putting a hit on my husband. I can't give you my ring. I got to make it look like and make him feel like we're good, but I won't wear it around you. Don't be mad at me. That makes me sad." She also wrote in another letter, "This was honestly the most time spent with my, quote, husband in a long time. We had a good day, but it really solidified for me why the two of us just don't work. I just really effing missed you all damn day." Now, when it comes to building a case, these letters, as you can see, they are damning evidence against Elena Bardin. She writes in this letter, quote, "You know my child is my #1 priority, but the way you love and talk about redacted name makes me no doubt that you're an amazing father. I don't think I have to go into the sex part of it because you and I both know that is the cherry on top." Now, clearly Bardin, as the teacher, is taking advantage of this teenager, but on top of that, on multiple occasions, prosecutors say that she brought up a hit on her husband. Now, in this letter, she says, quote, "I know you'll say you'll, quote, take care of him, but shouldn't someone else do it so the suspicion is miles away from you? IDK, I'm going to miss you so effing bad tonight. You look so handsome today, love. I love you." Now, she also once wrote, "You're out of your mind for talking about poisoning my, quote, husband." And she says, "I get nervous when I go out and the line's cut off and come home and someone has killed him." Now, with the letters and security video showing Bardin going into the boy's cell, you have the explicit pictures that were developed at a Walmart, and you have these letters. Police certainly had evidence to confront Bardin, which they did. And here's the body cam video of her arrest. One thing that stood out to us is just how cool and calm it seems Bardin is as she's being confronted with very much life-changing allegations.
I've been arrested.
I'll let him know that you've been arrested.
Sure.
And then obviously you need to reach out to him from the jail, okay?
Okay.
And then just, again, he knows me, I know him. You can just
Will
tell
his number be there? Because y'all don't have it. Like, I have a card in my car.
Okay, I'll get it. How much you need? Where's it?
I just like right next to my phone.
Just kidding.
Okay. I don't want to get something out of my vehicle.
Is this okay? She asked for her bye.
Yeah, that's fine.
You let him hold that drink?
Hey, your mom's got, your mom's good with taking the car, right? Your parents are good with taking the car, right?
With us taking the car?
Yeah, when we're done with it, we're going to turn it over to you guys. We just want to make sure you got a driver and stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
You can put those up.
So we're done with this. I
Yep.
can put it back in my car.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
You have anything on you? You're all in here.
No. I just got my attorney's card in my pocket.
Up here. Right here. Next time. We're just gonna get this one right here. Before I get these in there, I'm gonna patch it in real quick, okay?
Okay.
Well, I guess there's stuff in here. I need to get that.
Now, Bardin doesn't say much, but you see her very calm and seemingly not too shocked that she was being arrested. She also says she already had a lawyer. And here's when she gets out of the cruiser at the county jail. The officer reads to her that her husband has filed a protective order.
You getting me out right here?
Yeah, we're at the jail.
Okay.
Let's get your glasses. Just go to the top of the ramp for me.
Yes. He just now walked through the door.
Have a seat here.
this. Just a few minutes, okay? Okay, thank you.
Now, the rest of that video is redacted. In all, prosecutors say that Bardin and the boy exchanged roughly 140 pages of letters, many sent by her talking about sexual fantasies with an underage teenager. Bardin learned her fate in September in a trial that lasted 2 days, and it returned a shocking verdict because Bardin was found guilty on one count of first-degree sexual abuse and a count of unlawful transaction with a minor and distribution of obscene material to a minor. But, and this was the shocking part, on that count of trying to get a boy in a juvenile facility to kill her husband, as was allegedly put in those letters, jurors found her not guilty. Perhaps buying the argument that was put out that her communication with the boy on that front, it was just a joke. The Times-Leader, the local newspaper, writes that Bardin's defense attorney said that all of this was a joke, that these letters about killing Bardin's husband, they were never taken seriously. The newspaper did say that the juvenile victim in this case testified in trial and told jurors that he thought Bardin was serious about wanting to kill her husband, but he never planned to actually do anything about that. Now, her attorney also told the underage teen, the victim in this case, that he was actually grooming her as much as she was grooming him. Bardin's husband filed for divorce before her trial in May of this year, and he also filed for custody of their daughter, according to the Times-Leader. Now, that gets us to just how much time Bardin is going to spend behind bars. Prosecutors asked for a sentence of up to 14 years in prison. And this month, that is what the judge ruled Bardin's sentence to be. According to the Union Bulletin newspaper, Bardin was sentenced to consecutive terms of 10 years for unlawful transaction with a minor and 4 years for sexual abuse. She also received a 12-month sentence for a distribution charge that she will also serve during her time in prison. And on top of that, this woman, who was once a teacher, will have to register as a sex offender for 20 years. The newspaper also writes that Bardin's supervisor testified that Bardin had been counseled and told to end the relationship with that underage teen, and she didn't. Quote, "Not only did you not heed that advice and stop, it looks like to me like you actually doubled down on the behavior after that," the judge reportedly told Bardin in court. Joining us now to talk more about this case and the sentence for Elena Bardin is former sex crimes prosecutor Dan Shore. Thanks for being with us as always. We see this case come to an end. We've covered it a couple of times. She gets 14 years, and that's what the prosecution was looking for. What do you make of her getting exactly what the prosecution came into that asking for her sentence to be?
Well, it shows that the judge took this very seriously and that the judge wanted to give what the prosecutor was asking for. That's a significant incarceratory sentence. It's 14 years. It's a significant part of her life. She's 27, so if she serves that full sentence, she'll be 41 when she's released. That's the prime of one's life in many ways, late 20s, 30s, into the early 40s. And I think that's understandable why that sentence was given when you look at all the facts here and how this wasn't just an isolated incident. This was an ongoing pattern of behavior with someone who was underage and in a very vulnerable situation, being in a juvenile detention facility.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because that was a very unique, and there's a couple unique parts of this story, you know, even the charge that she was found not guilty of. But the fact that it took place in a juvenile detention facility, the victim in this case is someone who I believe was facing some pretty serious charges, but nonetheless, he's in this juvenile detention facility. She's his teacher. How common is it to see a case like this?
Well, I think one thing that's common about this is that people who engage in sexual inappropriate conduct with underage people especially often do it when they're vulnerable. So someone who's in a juvenile detention facility is vulnerable. But we also see with educational institutions that's often the person who's been in trouble in the past, who maybe doesn't have a source of support from other people. And those are the type of people that often would not be believed if they just came forward. Now here there's a mountain of corroborating evidence and writing and other things, but often people who commit acts like this, they prey upon people who they know won't be believed, because if there wasn't the writings and the other evidence, then the defendant here could say, oh, come on, he's in a juvenile detention facility for very serious actions. Are you really going to take his word versus me, who's a teacher, who's trained, who's here to help people? So I think that's the type of person that often is preyed upon. And I did prosecute some cases, not involving juveniles in detention facilities, but women who were in women's prisons who were sexually abused by corrections officers. And it was the same theme, that they are easy targets, they're vulnerable, and often people don't believe them because they've committed alleged crimes in the past.
And I just think in these cases too, and we've talked about a lot of them, not one in a juvenile detention facility before, but often just how brazen these acts seem. And especially in a facility where I would assume there are cameras and oversight at a much higher level perhaps than what you would get at a school. What do you make of the mindset of the teachers who end up being convicted of these crimes and abuse these victims in ways where, I mean, clearly from us looking at this on the outside is, how did you think you wouldn't get caught? I mean, she's also exchanging all these letters with this victim as well.
Yeah, that's a fascinating part of the story, because we've talked about with other stories how modern technology has led to a greater record of some of the sex abuse conduct that we see through text messages, social media. But here, you're not even talking about technology. You're talking about handwritten letters that were given to this underage boy who was in a juvenile detention facility, and they were found there in the detention facility. So brazen is absolutely the right word, that this teacher thought that they wouldn't be discovered, or that this person, that she was trusting her life, her livelihood, not only her marriage, she's a mother, but also her freedom, because she's going to be incarcerated now. But she was trusting all of that on a 17-year-old who is in a juvenile detention facility. So that makes you wonder why she would do that. One interesting thing in addition to that is that the letters, when you read them, and the judge pointed this out, they're very articulate, they're very well written, and she's clearly thought this out in many ways, talking about the relationship and how things might be perceived by this boy and by her husband, and she talks about the wearing of the wedding ring. So this isn't just someone who is completely not in reality. She's very focused and clear about what is going on and what she wants, yet for some reason she thought that this wouldn't be uncovered, which for her was a huge mistake.
Very much so. And so she ends up being accused, and it's important to note she was not guilty of this, but she was accused of allegedly trying to hire this juvenile to take her husband's life. And like one of the letters that you could see if you were a detective, that you would say, this is what we should charge her with, and a prosecutor as well, you know, something along the lines of, quote, I know you'll say you'll take care of him, and take care of him's in quotes, but shouldn't someone else do it so the suspicion is miles away from you? IDK, I'm going to miss you so bleeping bad tonight. You look handsome today. Love you. I love you. So like you clearly have the relationship that's crossed the line here. But also, I mean, when someone reads that to me reads like a letter where you're trying to get someone to kill somebody. She was found not guilty of that. But what do you make of the fact that even though she's in a letter saying that she wants this to happen, that she was able in some ways to pass it off to say that she was kind of joking about it, didn't really mean it. And then I know that the victim as well said that he wasn't really going to do it, even though he felt like she was going to. What do you make of that not guilty verdict?
Right. Well, first of all, there's one level of moral culpability, and then there's a different level of criminal responsibility that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's no doubt that writing to someone about, at a minimum, hurting your spouse, if not killing them, is clearly morally reprehensible and frightening. But there's another level to say, can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she had the intent to get him to actually kill her husband? And in this case, the jury found that she was not responsible for that beyond a reasonable doubt. I think it's understandable. Maybe there's some wiggle room in the language that means that she wouldn't be convicted of that. But that doesn't mean that there were clearly really problematic things that she was writing to him and intimating about. And also when you're dealing with another person, even if you don't intend to have them really kill your husband, just writing to them about hurting your spouse, sometimes people, even for argument's sake, let's say she was not intending that, it might send the message to someone else where they may misunderstand it and they may think that that's what you want and they may do that. And we've seen cases like that where someone says, well, I didn't really think they were going to do that, but the person got the message that they should. So these are dangerous, dangerous messages that she was sending to this boy.
Yeah, incredibly dangerous. And though she's found not guilty of that, I mean, you read a letter like that and you can't unsee it. And that's just coming from I know the court of public opinion, but within the court, when it comes to a judge making a decision, does the judge factor in that evidence was presented during trial? I mean, how much does that, not really unseeing that she did write a letter, allegedly at that point, that she wanted this person to kill her husband, jury finds her not guilty of it, but for the judge, does that evidence still weigh in his mind or her mind when it comes to deciding what her punishment's going to be?
Sure. Whenever a judge does a sentence, they consider what's called aggravating factors, which are factors that might not be criminal violations, but make the offense worse. And then there's also mitigating factors that may make the person seem less responsible, or even if they committed the crime, there are mitigating factors such as maybe they were in a difficult situation or they've had a problematic past. So in this case, the judge wouldn't consider allegedly trying to have someone kill her husband because she was found not responsible, not guilty for that. So the judge can't consider that in her sentence, but you can still take into account as a judge the fact that she was writing to him in a way about hurting her husband. And even if it didn't rise to the level of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt to try to kill him, there's still evidence that she was reaching out to him and suggesting some kind of harm to her husband. So I think that could be considered as an aggravating factor, but the judge could not consider whether she actually wanted to hire him to kill her husband or get him to kill her husband, since she was acquitted of that. So I think there is a part of that that's an aggravating factor, but not the whole act that was originally alleged, since she was found not guilty for that.
And going to this punishment, you think of a 14-year sentence for this. And I know, just looking from her social media and some of the letters even, how important her daughter was to her. I mean, that's her daughter's childhood gone in a lot of ways. She's going to be in prison if she serves the full 14 years. I mean, that's an incredible sentence and something that you cannot get back. How common, and I know you represent, you've prosecuted these cases, you represent victims in these cases, like, do these teachers or people in positions of power just not realize the punishments that they could get and just how bad the crime is that they're committing when they do this?
That's always the question in these cases. It's to put it more colloquially, what were they thinking? And as I was saying before, not only was she taking these brazen acts, putting this intent in writing, but she was doing it with someone who was only 17 years old, who was in a juvenile detention facility. So probably someone who has committed some kind of acts in the past that are problematic. Certainly not someone that she should put her livelihood and her freedom in that person's hands. And as you talked about, having a young daughter who's now not going to see her mother except for prison visits for well over a decade, that is at a minimum going to remove her from being able to be a mother in that girl's life. And to grow up like that with a mother in prison for an offense like this is obviously going to be traumatic and difficult. So why would someone risk all that for this relationship? It tells me that in the defendant's perspective, she must have thought it was a real relationship that she really believed in, as strange and as problematic as that sounds. But to risk all that in the situation, that she must have believed that in her mind, and that is really concerning.
Yeah, and I know this is a question too, as we kind of wrap up here, Dan, that we've talked about before, but I always think it's important because in this case, the victim is 17 years old. If he was 18 years old, it's a different situation and he wouldn't have been in this juvenile facility. But, and he's also a male, and she, as a female, that people could look at this story and just say, so what? That this is a guy, we talk about that often. Why is it still problematic when you have a victim who is almost legally an adult that still is having this type of relationship with a teacher, and why it's something that's criminal?
Right, and we've seen a major change in societal attitudes towards this, although there are still way too many people who hear a story like this and say things like, oh, I wish that happened when I was a high school student, or things like that. And I think what they miss, and I've seen this in the cases I've prosecuted, is that even for a male student, a male underage person who is with an older female, there are traumatic consequences, because obviously this person's in a juvenile detention facility. They have some problematic aspect of their lives. You want people to learn about healthy relationships. Their introduction to sexuality should be hopefully done in a healthy way so that they can grow up and have good relationships in their lives, and to be introduced to that by someone who's not only just older, but in a position of power over them. Remember, younger person was incarcerated in a juvenile detention facility, so they didn't have freedom. This person was an authority figure, a teacher who had power and control over him. Often these teachers have a say in what kind of benefits or punishments someone gets based on how they behave. So this is really someone who had power and control over this young person, and then to sexually abuse them, which is what it is, can lead to scars, emotional over the course of their lives. And we've seen that with people who come back years later and talk about their experiences as teenagers and how it really traumatized them later on as they were trying to develop other relationships.
Yeah, and these type of cases, I mean, they have such a lasting impact on people's lives. I think these stories are just so important to talk about, which is why we often do episodes on these cases when they arise. Dan, I know it's been a big part of your work to prosecute these cases in your career, but also now you write about these types of stories. And you have a new book that's out called Open Bar. What do people need to know about it?
Sure. Open Bar is a fast-moving political thriller about sexual misconduct allegations, such as the ones we're talking about here, and people can find that wherever books are sold. They could also search for me on Substack and learn more about what I'm working on and what I'm writing.
Yeah, so important to talk about. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Former sex crimes prosecutor Dan Shore, thanks for being with us.
Great talking with you. Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.